via OneDrive, and if that doesn't work, I'm gonna create it on like a YouTube channel. So finally getting myself on YouTube after all these years. But it should be available to you all a little bit more accessibly, I'm hoping, after this training. And then let's go ahead and get ourselves started here. I'm going to present. All right. Can everyone see okay? Okay, so after a long awaited summertime, we are finally able to do our Keep King County Housed Year 3 training here at the end of September. Very excited to have all of you here today. I know it's been a long time coming. And we were just going back and forth with the county on trying to get some things finalized. I think a lot of things were up in the air with the budgets, and especially with like federal requirements constantly changing this year. So we made it. So excited, and we were able to get everyone's admin budget up a little bit higher this year. So it's now going to be 9.5% off of rental dollars distributed rather than the 8% that we had last year. Wanted to make sure that everyone is getting recognized for their good work. So woohoo, we are finally here and happy about that. Wanted to start out with a land acknowledgement. I don't know if somebody would like to come off of mute and just read out this land acknowledgement. If not, I'm happy to read it as well.
I can.
All right, Aleja, thank you so much.
Land acknowledgement. Honoring the Coast Salish people, United Way of King County Rent Assistance home-based team recognizes that the region is a traditional, unceded, and ancestral land of the Coast Salish peoples, including the Duwamish, Muckleshoot, Suquamish, and Tulalip tribes. This acknowledgement serves as a first step in honoring the land and its original stewards, but it should be coupled with ongoing actions to support tribal sovereignty, indigenous knowledge, and community well-being.
Thank you, Aleja, and thank you to all of the people who are here before us. And of course, the people who are here after us. And let's remember, as we are helping people with housing, that we are also continuing traditions and being stewards on this land of the Coast Salish people. So thanks, Aleja. All right. So today for our agenda, we're going to have some introductions of the United Way of King County team. Then we'll go into a Keep King County House program overview, Apricot basic navigation, client application, including those forms, the vendor process, denials and grievances, and the payment approval. We do have 2 breaks built into this training, so people will be able to go do your thing for a little bit. Since this is 2 hours, I understand it's a while to sit through. And if you do have any questions during the training, we do have some sections in this PowerPoint for questions. Also feel free to raise your hand, and Molly and I will get to you when we have a just kind of paused in the material. You're also welcome to drop questions in the chat. We are very lucky to have a lot of experts here today when it comes to this training. So everyone feel free to answer questions if you know the answer, or Molly or I, Asha or Alex, Tesser, many should be able to answer those questions as well in the chat. And I've been talking for a hot second, but my name is Danny Raddick. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the partnerships manager here at the United Way of Keene County Rent Assistance Team. I also, on this call, have Tess Sebastian. She is our senior program manager. We have Molly Gilmore, who uses she, they pronouns. She's our program manager. Alex Lopez, who uses they, them. They are our data compliance specialist person for HMIS entries and also currently working on our grievances. Asha Na, who uses she, her. She is our YDIP program coordinator and also helps on Keep King County Housed a little bit. And then we have Akvender, who also goes by Minnie Carr, she, her, and she is our RA program coordinator. So I will, if my team can just like come off a camera really quick or just put a little reaction in their chat so people can see who they are, that would be great. Sweet, getting those reactions. Okay. Cool. And now that I've introduced myself, I'm going to come off of camera because it can sometimes distract me a little bit, looking at my hair the whole time. And maybe you'll see my cat too, so don't want to be that much of a distraction there. Um, Wanted to go through a couple of terms and abbreviations just as a refresher to people or for folks who are new. This will help you get adjusted as we go through. Um, First and foremost, KKCH stands for Keep King County House. This is the main program that we are working on with this grant funding. UWKC is United Way of Keene County. KCBA or slash HJP, that's going to be the Keene County Bar Association or the Housing Justice Project. They are not with us for this training. They do a lot of the eviction prevention side of it. So they're working actively with tenants who are in court right now or have attorneys assigned to them. Apricot, we are going to continue to use Apricot as our CRM for Keep King County House applications, and we process all of these applications under this system. The client intake form gets abbreviated as CIF. This is going to be our centralized waitlist on Apricot, where tenants are selected, and tenants will fill out an intake form before they are selected for rental assistance. Folders in Apricot, these are going to be different subsections where clients' applications and ASACs are stored. The ASAC, which is the application status and assistance calculation. This is the folder where the manager submits client information and documents, where we take our notes and where we see case statuses. RA will stand for rental assistance. EP will stand for eviction prevention. Vendor, that's going to be used synonymously with a landlord or a property management company. These are the people who are paid for the rental assistance. VIF, this is a vendor intake form. This stores our W-9s, payment info for the vendor. AMI or area median income. This will be a qualification for people who are participating in this program. PM and LL, these two terms will be used interchangeably. PM is property manager, LL is landlord, and yeah, vendor will also be used synonymously with this term. WHAM, we're not going to get too deep into WHAM today, just we have a few more basic information to go over, and likely in our first check-ins or learning circles, we'll go over a bit more of what WHAM is, but this stands for waste, abuse, and misuse. This will be violation or abuse of RA funds through fraud and or document manipulation. And this can be done by both the tenant and the landlord. Arrears, this equals past due rent and current month that the application is being processed in, i.e. if you are working with Curly McFry's case in July, July is the current month, it is considered an arrear. Future or prospective rent assistance. These are going to be the months following the arrears that the tenant can receive RA for. I'm going to get rid of this last sentence since this is not Keep King County House. But KKCH can limits prospective rent to 2 months. The payment period, these are going to be months included in the rental assistance, including future months. And then those are just going to be a quick like check-in list of um, acronyms and maybe verbiage that you'll see during this training. All right. And here we are at the start of Keep King County Housed. So many of us have been working with Keep King County Housed before. This will be its third year um, in its program infancy. So happy birthday to it. It's going to be in its, I think, terrific threes this year. Um, so the point of Keep King County House is to help vulnerable and very low income households in King County who are behind in rent payments and or facing eviction due to non-payment of rent. Um, here, like King County, so this is run through the King County Adult Services Division. They ask that at least 15% of the funds go to our buy-in for organizations, which is defined as an organization that are operated by and for the communities that they serve. On this call, we have Central Cultural Mexicano, Urban League, Reclaiming Our Greatness, and REWA, who are all a part of our buy-in for agencies. But that also does not negate the hard work of Mary's Place, Wellspring, and oh my God, did I forget somebody? I think it's just Mary's Place, Wellspring, and HJP, who just do not fall within the buy and for category, but everybody is doing a great job here. And then 15% of it goes towards eviction prevention. So in our home-based partnerships, we have Housing Justice Project and Mary's Place, who helps us achieve this goal. Housing Justice Project works with people who are actively facing eviction with a summons and complaint. Mary's Place is working with folks who have a pay or vacate notice. And then the rest of everyone, even though we all are working with folks in that category, is going to be CCM, Reclaiming Our Greatness, REWA, Urban League, and Wellspring Family Services. Since we don't have a lot of time to do like formal introductions for everyone, if everyone could just put their name, preferred pronouns, and then their organization in the chat, so we can all get to know each other, that would be great. But welcome everyone, and we have a very strong team here. A lot of us are doing just amazing work in and out of the community. All right. For Keep King County House, our vulnerable tenants are going to be people who live in King County. All tenants are going to need to enroll for the program using the client intake form. The client intake form is going to add them to the wait list, since we do have a large group of people who are in need of rent. And then once people are added to the wait list, tenants are going to be categorized in two different ways. The first one will be, are you eligible for this program or are you ineligible for this program? The second one is going to categorize them into 3 tiers. And then once they are in these tiers, they'll be randomly selected to apply from the tier that they occupy. I will be very frank, about 90% of the tenants who register for this program are a part of tier 1, or do get qualified as tier 1 from our apricot algorithm. And those are going to be folks who currently have a pregnancy in the households, have children 18 years old or younger in the family, are below 30% area median income, and we should have a AMI chart in the next couple of slides, are living with a disability, or actively facing eviction, whether that be through a summons and complaint, which is the official legal eviction, or a pay or vacate notice. Our tier two folks are going to be folks who are between 30% to 50% area median income, have a history of homelessness with one person who's on the lease, or a history of eviction within the past 7 years. And then our tier three folks are going to be folks who are between 50% and 80% AMI. You may find a tenant can occupy like all three spaces. However, they only need to prove their tier via one category, and whichever category is kind of their highest tier, that's the tier that we will say they occupy for this program. So if you're working with someone who is between 50 to 80% AMI, but they have children in their household who are 18 years old or younger, then that person is going to be considered tier one. Um, Last year for folks, we know that there was a lot of people in our wait list. So in spring of 2025, our lovely Molly conducted a automatic outreach via MailChimp to everyone on our wait list who had an eligible client intake form and had not been selected. So just due to the randomization of things, we had people who had applied in or registered for this wait list in July of 2023 who had not been selected yet, people who had applied in like January of 2024 who had not been selected yet. And the thing is, people's situations do change pretty frequently and pretty drastically to a point where we weren't sure if we had the correct contact information for folks when they were getting selected. We were not sure if we had people who were currently in arrears or people who wanted to be a part of the program. So using that, we just knew that we had a lot of people on this wait list. I think at the time we had about 21,000 people who were eligible to be selected, but had yet to be selected. So using that automatic outreach, which took place over 3 months, we asked people if they still wanted to be a part of the program, if they needed to do any updates to their contact information. And based off of these contact attempts, we ended up archiving around 9,000 records for either being a duplicate or for being non-responsive or opting out. Now, please note, if you do have a tenant that's all like, no, I swear I registered for this, we are able to unarchive that record. And if you know of any tenants like that, please email Molly or myself so that we can unarchive that record. The goal of the cleanup was to make sure that we were assigning clients who are responsive and eligible for the program, since clients' lives do change pretty frequently while they're waiting for selection. And our goal this year is going to be to get our denial rate below 40%. Since last year, most of us were hovering around 55% with the denial rate. And since no one gets paid on denials, we want to make sure that you guys are able to work with people who are ready to go and ready to receive the rental assistance. Waitlist communication is also going to happen quarterly, just to let unselected eligible tenants know that they are still on the waitlist. Molly, did you have anything else you wanted to add about this slide at all?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay, cool. All right. So once they're on the wait list, what makes a tenant eligible? So for this program, when a tenant is selected, the tenant must still reside in King County. So if you see that someone lives in Tacoma, or Snoqualmie, wait, Snoqualmie is the one, yeah, or Snohomish, those are both outside of King County, you would deny them right away. The tenant income must be at or below 80% area median income. On the side here, I do have our current area median income chart. This is also listed multiple places in Apricot and on some of our payment forms. The tenant also must have a missed rent payment or currently owe rent or at their rent at their apartment or house at the time that they were selected, and or they were told that their right to occupy their current housing will terminate in less than 21 days. So that would be folks who have a pay or vacate notice or an eviction notice. The tenant must still reside in the resident, and then both tenant and landlord must be willing to participate. Should we select someone from the intake form and they have moved to a new place in King County, we must pay rent at the current place that they owe, not the place that they moved from, but we will be able to change like addresses and landlord information on the application, even if it is different from what was on the intake form. Program eligibility documents. So once the application is submitted, we are asking landlords to provide a lease and a ledger, and the landlord to provide proof of ownership or the W-9. We'll get more into those documents in a little bit. Tenants will have to provide a proof of income, so a tax return or Form 1040, W-2s, pay stubs, bank statements, a letter from a government agency that shows monthly or annual income, such as SSI, TANF, unemployment, or an income attestation. If they do not have any of these proof of incomes, we must provide income documents for adults over 18 years old in the households. And so that is going to be anyone who was born before today's date in 2007. The proof of residency for a tenant, that can be pretty simple. It could be their POI if that also has their address on it. But we can also use a utility bill, voter registration card, vehicle or insurance registration, or a bank or credit card statement. Proof of housing instability, that one will either need to be a eviction notice, the 14 or 30-day pay or vacate notice, or a ledger. And then no lease attestations are going to be allowable for Keep King County Housed. So everyone must have a lease. We'll discuss what's needed on that lease in a few slides from now. Since this is a review for everyone, I'm going to just quickly show you this slide for proof of residency. I think everyone on this call has done a pretty good job at supplying proof of residency. Just note, you can also use a lease or a ledger that the landlord provided you for the POR. And then you can also use a ID. I would just be careful asking for an ID, as some of our tenants might be a little nervous about giving out information. I would not use a social security card for a tenant. Just that wouldn't even have their address on it. And then I'll go ahead. We can bring that back for review. POI, I'm also going to kind of skim through this line to this as well, since a lot of us know which documents are going to be acceptable. The thing that we will emphasize is we will need an income document for every household member over 18 years old, including adult children, so children who maybe recently became 18 and may still be dependent on their parents, or anyone who is a dependent who is still an adult. And then the thing that you should always look for on the proof of income is that it clearly states the household member's name, and it states either a monthly or yearly rate of income or a lack thereof. So if they have zero income, that could be like a letter from unemployment saying like, you aren't receiving any money from us, or we have no proof of you working. If a tenant's income is cash-based, or they have a summons and complaint with a court date in 5 days or less, they can use an income attestation. What is not acceptable for proof of income is going to be handwritten documents, screenshots that do not show the household member's name, or a credit card statement, since a credit card statement is just going to show money that they owe, not money that they have coming in. Again, this is going to list off and give more details about the types of proof of income that we can use. Does anyone have questions about the proof of income before I kind of move forward? We do have links here to the Washington unemployment website. So if your tenant is using that, you would be able to walk them through that. I would also say people working for like Uber or DoorDash should also have a portal that they can log into to get their information on their months of income, even though that can change with what they're doing. The thing I am going to slow down and talk to everyone about is going to be the tenant income attestation. So if your tenant does not have any acceptable documents for their income, and their income is cash-based, or they're actively facing an eviction, we do have a tenant income attestation in multiple languages that you can help your tenant fill out, and then both you and them must sign. Um, if a tenant checks that they are actively facing eviction, we will expect to see a pair vacate notice and or their summons and complaint added to the ASAC form in addition to this document. And then we also, as a caseworker, are expecting you to record your contact attempts with the tenant and what documents you asked them for, and the tenant just telling you that they do not have documentation in our ASAC notes. We'll describe that in a little bit, in further detail in a little bit. But as a caseworker, what you are attesting to is that you ask them for the available documentation, and there is none. Once we see that signature, that's essentially all we are relying on you to do. And then leaving those contact notes that shows due diligence, it's going to limit your liability. Of course, it is not your fault if somebody chooses to manipulate the program. It does happen, and we're not going to leave you liable for that. So just know this is to just help people who may have limited access to documentation resources. This income documentation looks a little bit like this. I think most of us have seen this before. Section 1 is going to be the tenant's name. It should be one income attestation per adult in the household. And then the household size is section 2. This is going to include everyone in the household, including children. Section 3 will be the reason for using the attestation. Checkbox 1 means that they have the active summons and complaint, and then the court will, they have their court date within 5 days. Again, if you check this box off, we do expect to see the summons and complaint document uploaded under the proof of housing instability on the ASAC as well. Checkbox 2, you want to use this if the household is unable to provide documentation proving their income, i.e. they have cash-based income. And then if checked, a tenant must include a narrative describing why they do not have income documents. We have written out a couple of reasons, or common reasons that we see people checking off this box. So the biggest one, employer pays tenant via cash. This is common in like housekeeping and construction jobs. If a tenant is a young adult, so maybe they're still in high school and relying on their parent for income. If they are like an elderly dependent and also relying on like an adult child for income. The tenant is on a visa that does not allow them to find work. This is very common with student visas. Or if the tenant takes care of children in the household while their partner or spouse works. All of those, you would just need like a sentence saying that, and then you can move on to this next sections. 4 is going to be the income declaration. This is where they'll state what their monthly or yearly attestation is and whether or not they fall under 80% AMI. 5 is going to be legalese that the tenant is attesting to, and then our signature by both the tenant and the case manager. This document is uploaded in DocuSign so that you can help a tenant fill it out, and you can fill it out yourself. All right. In addition to the documents for proof of income and proof of residency, you will also need to provide a proof of prioritization. The proof of prioritization is just going to show why they fall under the tier that they fall under, and you only need to supply one proof of income for one of the tiers that they fall under. So using the example of my cat, he is a tier 1 tenant. He has 2 children under 18 and makes $20,000 a year and has a summons and complaint. When Stanley gives you his proof of income, this is sufficient for the proof of prioritization. So I don't need to ask him like, oh, can I get your kids' birth certificates as well? As long as I have the proof of income, I'm not going to need to get those birth certificates. I'm not going to need to get a passport. Should he have the income attestation, then I would maybe ask like, oh, can you give me your summons and complaint, or could you give me your kids' birth certificates to prove that you fall under this tier? Most of us are familiar with this acceptable documents. So again, for tier 1, it will be children in the households under 30% AMI. You just use the same proof of income that they've been using. Disability in the households, I would say grab like a medical record or a letter from a government agency like SSI or SSDI that shows that they're living with a disability. The active eviction notice, again, you'll need this document for multiple parts of this application. So I feel like upload this as well. So the summons and complaint or the 14 and 30 day. These 2 notices must be active, so it can't be like an eviction summons from 7 or 8 months ago that's been resolved. It has to be a current one. Speaking of the summons and complaint, the summons and complaint is the official legal eviction notice. This is going to be from the landlord's attorney, and it's a court document that tells the tenant, like, hey, you're being charged with an eviction. Your initial hearing is going to be on X date. This is going to be my reminder to you all that you are not able to give legal advice. So if you see this document, just tell the tenant like, hey, I see this. We're going to be working on your rental assistance as quickly as possible. I'm not able to give legal advice or be a mediator between you and your landlord, but I would encourage you to respond to this document. And that's all you need to say. I at the very end of this will be showing a resource from the Tenant Law Center that's coming up. They're going to be giving us 2 trainings on how to help a tenant who's actively facing eviction, which will be really exciting. The first of these trainings is going to be on October the 3rd. And then the second one is going to be on October 24th. So very excited to have both of those come up. The second one is going to be the 14 or 30-day pay or vacate notice. This is more common. This is something that your landlord or your property management company will put on your door. This warns the tenant that they may get an impending eviction notice if they do not pay their past due rent or vacate the property. This document is not a legal document, but does appear and is usually stated very coercively. Most important thing is to encourage your tenant not to leave. Once they leave the property, we are not able to pay off on their rent. And there's going to be a lot less options for them to pay off that debt in the future. They also will lose a lot of their rights to their tenancy if they leave. So encourage the tenant to just respond to this by talking to their property manager, and then also make sure that we're working very quickly on their rental assistance application. And then while we can't offer legal advice, yeah, again, it's in the tenant's best interest to stay at the property if we are working on their application. So, again, can't give rental assistance if they move at that current location, and they do lose a lot of their legal protections. This is an example of what a pay or vacate notice looks like. It is up to the property management company whether they're giving the person 14 days or 30 days, and it may just depend on the city that they're living in as well. I know in city of Seattle, the 30-day is required, whereas I think in Kent, the 14-day can also matter, but you do have to give one or the other required by law before getting an eviction notice. Tier 2 and 3. Um, if you need a proof of prioritization for both of these, most households who fill out the intake form fall under tier 1. That's going to be about 90%. And then everyone who I am doing tenant selection from does also fall under tier 1, at least at the time of selection. However, during the application, you may uncover that the tenant's situation has changed and they are now tier 2 or tier 3. It is totally okay for you to keep serving that household. Just collect documentation to prove that they are tier 2 or tier 3. And in most likelihood for both of these tiers, you'll just be using the proof of income document to prove that. The one that's the hardest to prove is the history of homelessness, as homelessness is something that people don't really have a lot of documents for. The past history of eviction, that one you could use like a past eviction notice from 7 years ago or from within 7 years. All right, moving from the tenants to the landlords. So landlord participation is required for households to receive assistance. We do not allow for direct payments to renters. And we cannot make households or payments to household members or third parties, such as a utility company that the tenant has a relationship with, but the landlord doesn't. We do not allow for subletting situations. So if Hank is living in Europe but subletting to his friend Jim, we are not going to allow for a rental situation where we pay Hank past rent that Jim owes. The application would have to be under Hank with their landlord. If the landlord does not participate in the program or they choose not to participate in the program and tell you that, the household will be determined ineligible. So the landlord must provide the lease, which proves the rental relationship between them and the tenant. The lease should list both the landlord and the tenant as parties responsible for the agreement. It should have the address of the rental, the terms of the rental arrangement. So from, April 2024 through March of 2025, and then monthly after that. And then should have a rate of rent per month and be signed by both the tenant and the landlord. That signature can be manual or electronically or done electronically. A landlord will also need to provide you a ledger, and this needs to show what the tenant is being charged. This ledger is also going to serve as a proof of housing instability or proof of homelessness on the ASAC if the tenant has not been given any other notices. The ledger must show what's being charged, when it is charged, and a running balance of debits and payments. But it is not usually as formal of a document as a lease. So you may see one that was sent to you as a screenshot or something that was sent to you as an Excel sheet. Those are acceptable as long as we can see, okay, this is for this tenant, this is what's being charged, this is what they've paid, and this is what they currently owe. The landlord will also need to sign and or provide you with Form W-9. This must be signed and dated, and new landlords should have a signature and date from 2024 and after. We'll get more into this a little bit later. In terms of payment parameters, each household can receive up to 10,000 in assistance, and this is going to be the max. Arrears are going to be paid first, so we always want to prioritize what they owe. But if that $10,000 has not been surpassed, households are eligible for up to 2 months of future rent assistance. Last year we had an average rental assistance payment of around $6,600 per household. So tenants should be within that 10,000 range. If you have a person who owes a lot more, you may need to talk to the landlord to just make sure that they accept the terms. We cannot pay late fees, and we cannot pay move-in or move-out fees or fees from damages. Those are expected to be waived by the landlord for accepting this rent. Again, if a landlord is getting $10,000, they should be waiving a $10 charge that they're charging someone for a late fee. We can only offer up to 150% fair market rate for the unit. We have a calculator that will calculate this for everyone. And then we cannot offer duplication of benefits for any month within a payment period. So if you're assigned Mary Poppins and you find out while working with her, she's also going to receive some money from St. Vincent de Paul. We just can't cover the same months that St. Vincent is covering. All right. The other thing that the landlord will need to sign and fill out is going to be the payment agreement form, or the PAF. A landlord must sign and date the payment agreement form to accept the terms and conditions of our program. And a PAF is available on our public wrap site. It'll also be sent to you via email, and it's going to be available to you on DocuSign. The PAF contains tenants' information, rental assistance calculations, fair market rate for the unit, 150%, the total rental assistance offered, and then the terms and conditions for the landlord and the landlord's signature. These next couple of slides are going to go through what the landlord is agreeing to. Essentially, in order to accept the money from us, they are agreeing to not evict, terminate, or refuse to renew the above household's tenancy until at least after the payment period, which again will include those 2 months of future rent if they are available. There's a couple of other terms that they will agree to. We do have some sheets about this. And then always very important to let the landlord know we do expect them to waive late fees. The other resource to use when it comes to landlords is when you are working with a new tenant, make sure that you run their address through Parcel Viewer. This is a tool to determine whether or not this address is in fact in King County. You may see a couple of tenants assigned to you from Bothell. There are parts of Bothell that are in King County and parts of Bothell that are in Snohomish County. So always important that we check. This also will have us help us determine who the taxpayer or the landlord is, so the person who owns it. This will be a very important tool in identifying potential waste, abuse, and misuse, especially if you're working with a mom and pop landlord, and they're telling you that they own the property since 2003. You look up on Parcel Viewer and this person has owned this property since 2025 and is not the person that you're talking to. This should be used for every case. So again, every time a tenant presents you with their address, you should write that in. I have the link to it here. If you do run an address through Parcel Viewer and it comes up with an error, there is a chance it was entered incorrectly, or the address is not in King County. If you do get the error, please check the formatting of the address, since sometimes Parcel Viewer is sensitive to abbreviations and misspellings. Sometimes I will end up getting the address that's listed on the proof of residency document, since sometimes the tenant might write that in wrong or give like a long abbreviation of it. So like sometimes if you type in like Martin Luther King Jr. Way South and you type every word of that in, it won't show up. You have to like do the abbreviations on it, MLK Jr. South or S. If you're still not seeing anything, I would advise you to just Google it and make sure it is a real address. And then again, use that POR to determine whether or not that address is legitimate or not. There are also times where King County will let you know that the parcel viewer is down. They should put that right on the website if that is happening and when it should get fixed. All right. So that brings us to the end of this first section. I will leave some space for questions. If not, we'll take a break for 5 minutes. Um, Everyone's apricot account should be active again, so please take a quick moment to log in before we get into our apricot training. Alicia, I did send you your apricot login right before this meeting. So please let us know if you need help signing into that. And then I'll have everyone come back at around 11:25.
Danny?
Yeah, Hannah.
Yes, I just wanted to give you an update that Maha from Mary's Place is on maternity leave. So she will not be, active in Apricot for a few months. So
Okay.
just in case you've tried to like send her anything and you haven't gotten any response or anything, and that's why she's also not here. So just wanted to give you that quick update.
Okay. Oh, well, congratulations to her on the new baby. Is she doing well?
Yeah, I mean, she's actually still kind of waiting. She took off like a little bit before the baby came just due to her needs. So she hasn't actually given birth yet, but really any day now. So
Okay. Well, I
yeah.
hope it's a good, healthy pregnancy and birth
Yeah.
for her. I think she's guest accessed. Gonna check that really quick. And if she is, then we can just keep it as it is for right
Okay.
now.
Okay. Great.
Um, yeah, if she's standard, I'm gonna change her to just change her to a guest right now since those ones are a little scarcer.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Hannah.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, we are now at 11:25. All right, Alicia, great. I'm happy you were able to log in. Got your Wellspring access. Okay, just want to make sure that everyone is back. If I could get a quick like thumbs up reaction from folks. All right. Perfect. Molly, are you back?
I am.
All right, sweet. I'm gonna go ahead and give it over to Molly to start on the apricot training. Molly, do you want to run the slides?
I can, yes.
Okay, cool. I'll stop sharing.
Hold on, give me a second here. All right. So our next part of the training will be going more into apricot. So I'll just get started here. So the two things we're going to go over are duplicate checks and some important reminders since you are all pretty familiar with apricot at this point, so didn't want to be very redundant. So just wanted to remind you all of the duplicate check that we have. Basically, this duplicate check is on emails specifically. So if you're running into an issue where a tenant is saying that they're getting some sort of duplicate error check when they're creating an intake form, it's more than likely that they already have an intake form with the email that they're using somewhere in our system. So the first line of defense there would be to just search the email that they're using in our intake form search bar and see what comes up. And you'll probably find an intake form associated that way. So the message noted is underneath the primary contact email on the intake form will say, if you see this message error with duplicate check, you already have an intake form on file. So that is good to know. Some other things are in order to make sure you're selecting the correct tenant and not creating a duplicate client intake form, to search all of these other things. So it's not always likely that you're creating a client intake form for a tenant, but if you are, it's always best practice to see if they already have one on file. It's very likely people will forget that they created an intake form, or for some reason they think that it's been deleted because it's been a while, but generally we keep them unless, you know, as Danny had mentioned earlier, we did do a big cleanup. So if someone was unresponsive, we might have archived it, but we do have a lot of entries. So it is likely that they already have one. So looking for name, maybe one name at a time. I usually like to go last name first and then the first initial of their first name and see what comes up. And yeah, one at a time. So then delete that and then try email, delete that, try phone number, stuff like that. So that would be a good way to see if an intake form is already on file. And if you did find a duplicate, just let myself or Danny know, and we can archive whichever one makes the most sense to archive. We'll generally archive one that doesn't have any applications attached to it, or is if neither of them have an application attached, we'll generally archive the oldest one so we have the most up-to-date information. Okay, so this is reminders and also kind of updates. We have been working with a new grant this year. So that is under CRAP, ERA3, and that would be shown as CRAP 11-62, that number. So when you're looking under on the client intake form, you'll start to see things involving CRAP. So that just means that that person is being served under a different grant that is not associated with KKCH at all. And if they are being served with CRAP, they cannot also be served with KKCH. So if you do see that happening, just make sure to let Danny or myself know so we can unassign them to you, because that would be a duplication of benefits at that point. And so yeah, there is under funding source, you will see that now. And yeah. Danny, did you want me to go into the selection process?
Yeah, you can go into the selection, or wait, sorry, never mind. I'll talk about this one really quick. So case selections, so what ends up happening is the case selection is going to be randomized within the tier. We will serve folks who are tier 1 first, so likely we'll always be serving folks from tier 1 with the need. Cases will be assigned to agencies every 2 weeks, due to kind of a situation that we were finding with tenants being in arrears or not. I've decided to do or to try out doing the assignment every 2 weeks near the 1st of the month and the 15th of each month, just depending on the work day or the work week. So this is going to make sure that a tenant that is selected is not waiting at the very end of the month to finally fall into arrears, and then we get into a whole, like, is it fair that we're not giving them rent or not? No, they're going to get selected on very close to the 1st or the 15th, so there should be no question about that. The renters will be notified of their selection just via email. So there's an automatic email that gets sent from Apricot letting them know that they've been selected. Within about 24 hours, they'll receive an invitation to the Connect portal. And then the case manager contact attempt should begin shortly after selection. We do have an expectation that you should be making the first contact attempt to them within 48 hours of tenant assignment. And then, yeah, the next slide. Yeah. So yeah, every 2 weeks. And then once the case is assigned to you, I'll be emailing the case manager, letting you all know, like, hey, or the managers letting you all know those cases have been assigned. The Connect portal invite has been sent out. And then those assignments will show up underneath your bulletin as in progress. So for managers, once you get those assigned, you'll go ahead and click on the record. And you should be able to assign it to a team member just based off of the drop down. So here you can see an example of that. Again, you want to make sure that the funding source is the Keep King County Housed funding source, and that they do have a selected to apply underneath their selection status. But the agency assignment should be pre-populated to your agency, and you'll just need to select the staff member. that you want to assign it to, and then click save, and voila, you can start building out that ASAC form. All right, and Molly, I think the rest of this you can go through.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
So when a client intake form has been selected, we do send an automatic email from Apricot to the tenant, and it will have a lot of auto-populated like things in the email. So they'll have their first and last name. It will show which agency they're being selected from, or which agency you are from. So they know if they're getting an email from an agency, like your agency, they know what it's about. This is when they'll know their record ID number for the first time. Well, actually, that's not true. They do get a confirmation email when they create their client intake form, and that's when they get their record ID. But this is reminding them of what their record ID is. And then this also gives them a link to create an application as well. Once their Connect portal invite is activated. So once it's activated, this is something that Danny and I believe Asha also does, is sending out this Connect portal access code, or email. So once it gets sent to them, it looks like this. The link does expire within 48 hours. So if you're working with a tenant that is has a tendency to be unresponsive or take a while to look at their email, this is a good time to assist them via phone call, just letting them know, hey, this email was sent to you. Please click it as soon as possible, or else we have to resend it, which we can do. It's not a huge issue, but it's always nice to just get it done before the email expires. So this is what it looks like, and it will say it's coming from Rental Assistance and Eviction Prevention Program. Okay, so there we have a Danny, did you want me to go into the contact attempts expectations?
Yeah, I think that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay. So when they're assigned, it will be the case manager's job to reach out to the tenant via phone and email. We did add a section to the client intake form that shows what their preferred contact method is. So you should be able to see that now if it is a newer client intake form. I believe we have text, call, and email on there. But with that being said, I think using all of the different forms of outreach is helpful, because you never know. There might be some way that they receive like outreach better than other ways. If a renter has not submitted their application online using the Connect portal, they might want to do it over the phone with you, and that is absolutely possible. And you're able to do that as long as in any of the places where it shows that they need to sign, just saying was like verbally confirmed that this was signed, and then put your name down. And yeah, this is also doing it over the phone is good if there's any language barriers, because you can use language line for that as well, or other translation tools. So we wanted to be clear about the expectations regarding contact attempts. So case managers are expected to begin contacting renters within 48 hours of assignment via phone, text, or email. Why is this? It's because once you're selected, automatic emails are sent out to the tenant. And if there's a long wait between receiving the automatic emails and hearing from their case manager, the tenant will be kind of confused and not know, and then they start calling United Way. They start like reaching out and trying to, they just get really like anxious about it. So I think it's best to have the case manager contact as soon as possible. So yeah, and then Apricot's automatic emails are sometimes flagged as spam or junk mail. So calling them could also let them know that, hey, you did receive this and it might be in your junk mail. So we're just everything gets on track that way. If you're at capacity and cannot make initial contact quickly, please tell your manager to lower your caseload or request less tenants. This is important because, again, the tenants do get really confused, or they want their case to be done quickly, and it just it creates a really angry tenant when it's taking a while or they are not hearing back from you. And yeah, time management tools are also good for that. If you need to like send initial emails like all on one day and then have to do another piece of the application on another day, that there's like ways you can plan your week so that every tenant is contacted in your caseload. There is no issue with working with less tenants at a time, as long as we all have clear expectations of what that's looking like. We want our tenants to have quality interactions with you versus working with too many tenants at once. And we do have scripts that you can use to make that communication a lot easier for you as well, which we'll talk about later. Okay, so from the client intake form, you all probably know this already, but you can go to access the Tier 2 forms through clicking this View Folder section on the right-hand side of the screen on the client intake form. And this will take you to the documents, all of the documents that are under the client intake form. So as a reminder, the client intake form is kind of a Tier 1 document. That's your main document that all of your other documents live under. So you will see that if there is an ASAC form already created, this will say 1 record here. And if not, that means that there is no ASAC created yet. Same with this is where you'll see application as well. And this is when you'll also see CRAP, and if there is a CRAP application already on file. And as I already mentioned before, if there is a CRAP application on file, we will not be working with this tenant with KKCH. So this is where you will go, and then I already went through that. Oh, I think this is actually, oops. That is, I think, the end of navigation, and I'm past it. Is this now Alex's part for HMIS?
No, Alex is gonna go over grievances at the end. I think most important thing for these next slides, and then Molly, I think we can kind of get through them since everyone is pretty well aware of this. So for Keep King County Housed, we do have a requirement in our contract to report everything that the client enters to the HMIS system. There are multiple places on the application. So Molly, if you could go to the next slide. So both on the intake form and the application, there is a notice of data collection. This will let the tenant know that their information that they are submitting is getting submitted into the HMIS system, also, which is a big database that kind of tracks homelessness here in King County as well as other counties. And we do want the tenant to know that their data is being collected. If they do choose to opt out with you, I know this is very common with clients who are facing DV. You are welcome to email us and let them know, like, hey, this client's opted out. And then, Molly, if you would go on to the next slide. And then, sorry, I think, yeah, for HMIS, these there are a couple questions at the very end of the application, just like last year, that ask about the HMIS questions. A tenant is always allowed to say prefer not to say or unknown. We just need to have those questions answered for when we enter it. And then this HMIS is going to be the one section that asks a tenants for their social security number or their tax ID. Again, if they do not have one, if they are undocumented, they can say prefer not to say or unknown and then not list that there. But then everything else on the application that has an asterisk next to it must be entered in order to move forward. But that's essentially everything for HMIS.
Great, thanks, Danny.
Mhm.
Some other key takeaways with the application is the contact information and the address and landlord information may have changed since the tenant created a client intake form. And then the time it takes to create the client intake form, be selected, and then create the application. That information generally does change fairly often. So it's always good to notice if especially the address is different on the client intake form. If it is, please put the application address on the client intake form and save it as updated. Same with the contact information, the email for the tenant and the landlord are the most important things to change there as well. And updating the household member names and income if new information has been received. That way, all the information is the same on both the intake form and the application. And documents, even if uploaded to the application, should be transferred to the application, to the ASAC form as well. So to link the client intake form to the ASAC, you will just click add and search the client intake form or the household ID and select it. And you will also have a section to attach the application as well. For case notes, we did notice this last year that the case notes section was not used as much as we'd like, especially if there is a grievance or something, and Alex is going to go into this more. We just really want to reiterate the expectations that we want these case notes section to be as detailed as possible. So that means every time you contacted the tenant, what email or phone number you used to contact the tenant, same with the landlord. That way we have all the information. If someone is marked ineligible, especially due to unresponsiveness, we know when and how they were contacted. So it just gives us the biggest picture possible if that case is reopened or if we're ever audited for some reason. We just really like to have those case notes. This is also the area where we on the United Way team can reach out and communicate with you as case managers if there's ever issues with the ASAC application. So that is always just good to check and update regularly. And if it is easier for you to make notes outside of the ASAC form, And then when you're like completing and finalizing the ASAC at the end, just putting all those case notes, that's okay. It as long as it's in there, and we have it in some capacity. We want to be able to work with you in the way that you work on cases. So for eligibility verification, there are different areas to verify household eligibility and priority tiers. All of these sections must be filled out for a case to go to payment. So on this eligibility verification section, these are like check marks and different things that show where these all need to be checked. And I believe that it's actually, you won't even be able to like add review required until these are selected. I might be wrong on that, but this is just an easy way for all of us to track if this eligibility has been checked or not. And then for the documents review section, we will add all of the documents, including the lease, ledger, payment agreement form, proof of residency, proof of prioritization, and extra documents as well. We have added a new section here because we were also noticing that by the time we got to the payment agreement form and sending that out to landlords to fill out, we'd come back, they'd fill it out, and then realize we'd actually have to mark this tenant as ineligible because they weren't in arrears at the time of selection. So now we have given the payment agreement form to the landlord. They're kind of expecting the payment at this point, and then we're saying, oh, actually, never mind, we're marking this tenant as ineligible. So we would like to specifically check this before we send any more information to the landlord to sign or anything, because we want to like minimize the amount of promising payments if we think that this tenant is going to be ineligible. So to do that, we added, so if you add your ledger to the ASAC, now this question will pop up, was the tenant in arrears on selection date? So we have the selection date added to the very first section of the ASAC. So it should be a pretty quick check to look at the ledger and then look at the selection date on the ASAC, which is auto-populated. You don't need to do that, and just see. And if yes, if it is yes, you can continue with the application. If it is no, you do need to mark that ASAC isn't as ineligible. Danny, did you want to go over this?
Yeah, I'll go over this fairly quickly since you kind of went over this already, Molly. So this is the tenant in arrears question. It is something that we all need to get on the same page on for this year. Especially towards the end of last year and the beginning of the summer, United Way received multiple complaints from tenants who were denied during the payment review process for not being in arrears. This happened at different agencies, so it's not just like one person in particular. But because we had already sent the payment agreement form to the landlord and that case was in review required, both the tenant and the landlord were under the presumption that they were going to be receiving rental assistance from us within a couple of weeks. And then got the denial email, and some of them were able to file a grievance. within the 2 weeks. Some of them were completely in the dark and expecting rental payments. This created both a negative experience for the tenant and the landlord, which we want to make sure we are creating positive experiences for both of these parties. And because it was a negative experience, and they were complaining, we did end up making an exception to approve this experience, but we need to kind of limit the exceptions that we're making for people, especially with the amount of folks we do know are currently in arrears who do need help. So to be on the same page, we want to make sure that we don't even send out a payment agreement form to a tenant who was not behind at the time of selection. That's why we're changing assignments to happen around the 1st or the 15th of the month, just so we don't have a tenant who was maybe selected on the 20th, waits 10 days to talk to you until they're finally behind on the 1st. We want to make sure that we collect the ledger early in the process, and make this determination before creating a payment agreement form, and then quickly communicating to both the tenant and the landlord, like, hey, one requirement is that you need to be in arrears at the time you were selected. You were selected on the 15th, and it shows that you weren't in arrears for the month of September or October, whatever month you're in. And communicate to them right away. Let them know they have 2 weeks to file a grievance. And if they can supply a ledger that shows that they did owe something, we can get the case back to them. Otherwise, we can offer to get them back into the wait list to see if they do fall behind again in a few months. So, but again, we do want to get on the same page here. This was creating a negative experience for people. And we just have, I think, too scarce of a resource to be making multiple exceptions when it comes to this role. So please do your due diligence, check that ledger within that first usually the first contacts that you have with the landlord to determine whether or not that tenant is eligible or not. Do we have any questions about this? Okay, thank you. All right, Molly, I think we can go move on.
Great. So for the income documents, this section is to add income documents for all adult household members. Number of adults will populate from the tenant's application. And then I guess a little pop quiz. What year are 18-year-olds born in right now? You can come off mute or put it in the chat.
2007.
Okay, great. So keep that in mind. And hopefully it will auto-populate, but this is always good to know. And next is the landlord and vendor verification, a section to link the landlord, the vendor intake form to the ASAC, upload the W-9 and confirm payment method is in this section. And the information about vendors and the W-9 is later in this presentation as well. So this is what the landlord/vendor verification section looks like. There is the document verification tab. There's a lot of checkboxes. I do notice sometimes that these are clicked yes when they actually are not yes. I think that it's just been an easy thing to do when you just think that everything is correct. But these are actually here for a reason, to check to make sure that the vendor is correct. So making sure these are accurate is very important, and not just selecting yes before actually checking. And then the assistance calculation, this section is to insert your assistance calculation by months and the amounts. This information should match exactly what is on the payment agreement form. If it is not, we will be pushing it back. And the information in this section will autofill on the payment form. So you only really have to enter it once, which is great. And this is the information that is entered into HMIS. So this is what that section looks like. Okay, so the link will populate after you've created a payment form for the this link is at the bottom of the ASAC form. And this is created, I believe, once you, so you create the payment form, and then once it's linked together, this will show up for you on the ASAC form. So it's pretty easy to create this. You just really have to link all of the documents together. So once you're on the payment form, you just link the tenant application, the vendor intake form, and the ASAC, and then all of the information will auto-populate. And yeah, that is just all of the ASAC question or sections. Does anyone have questions about this? Great. All right, I will move on then. Okay. Danny, are you taking over now?
Yeah, I'm going to take over, and I'm actually going to get through this section very quickly so we can get to your vendor section, Molly. Do you mind just like controlling the PowerPoint still?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, next slide. So there are a couple things that you'll be doing outside of Apricot, and a few documents that you'll use. The first one being the assistance calculator. We do have a new assistance calculator that will be sent to all of you via email. And that has the FMR for 2025 listed there. This is an Excel sheet. You'll be using this with the ledger to determine how much rental assistance will go to a tenant. Most of you know how to fill this out. Alicia, I'm going to reach out to you to set up a separate time to make sure that you are feeling confident in this as well. Very important to just download a copy to your computer before you use it, so you're not putting a tenant's information in a shared document. Molly, go ahead. All right. So again, you would just be filling this out. The big key on this is green is a predetermined field. Do not edit that section. Orange kind of changes based on household. That might be red to somebody. And then that's the spot where you'll be entering in like, oh, this tenant owes $1,000 for May. This tenant owes $500 for June. And then blue is going to be the actual rental assistance payment. The stuff that is in blue ends up going on the payment agreement form. Molly, next slide. Go ahead and skip all of these. Yeah, you'll change what the bedroom is. There's a drop down there, and that'll set the FMR. I would recommend saving the calculator just wherever you're saving your tenant documents, just in case you need to pull it out and show a landlord your calculations, like maybe you two are both getting something different, and you want to show them like, oh, well, it's because I calculated utilities like this. So go ahead and go to the next slide. Using the information on the rental assistance calculator, you'll also be filling out sections 1 through 4 of the payment agreement form. This document was updated in January because that's where we changed the FMR rates. So we should all have a current copy of this, but we will send it to you via email. Again, download this form from the SharePoint site before you use it so it doesn't get edited for everyone. This is the form that the landlord must sign. Section 1 is going to have the household information. 2 will be your assistance calculation, so straight from the assistance calculator. Section 3 will have the FMR. That'll be questions from the assistance calculator as well. And then based on that, you'll put the total FRAP payment, which is not to surpass $10,000. Section 5, you will not fill out. That is for the landlord to fill out via DocuSign. Next section. Yeah, so section 1, copy it straight from the tenant's applications. Sections 2 through 4, copy from the RA calculator. Section 5, filled out by the landlord or property manager in DocuSign. Next section, please, or next page. In addition to this, we do have some tenant scripts, landlord scripts, and then a program guide for Keep King County Housed. Those are the links to that, but Molly, go ahead and go to the next slide. That'll also get emailed to you. These are just going to be helpful in your communication to the tenants and landlords, kind of help you keep it like professional, especially if you are in a rougher situation with someone. Just, stick to the script, as they would say in a sales job. But you are welcome to modify these scripts to kind of fit your own personal voice. We do use these scripts to create a sense of urgency for both the tenant and the vendor, let them know that this is a time-sensitive process. And then the landlord, give them the program guide when you do send them that first contact attempt. That way they know what the stipulations of this program is, and they can agree or disagree to the terms right away, rather than you doing a whole case and them being like, we don't want to participate. Molly, go ahead and go to the next section. Again, there is that expectation that you are keeping it professional with both the tenants and the landlords. I know actually all of you, except for Alicia, but I'm sure you're going to fall into this as well. All of you do have very professional communication with our tenants and landlords. I trust that. But we do know that sometimes emotions are very heightened when someone is housing unstable. There may be a bit of a disagreement between a tenant and a landlord that you are not in charge of mediating, but you sometimes may act as a go-between. And just make sure that you are kind of, controlling your own emotions, stepping away if you need to. For communication guidelines, the expectation is that you make 3 contact attempts on different days over a 2-week period. After the 3rd contact attempt, wait 5 days. If a tenant or a landlord are unresponsive after those 5 days, you deny the application for unresponsiveness. On the scripts, the one thing that I changed is for the beginning is letting them know that they have 2 weeks from the day that you first contact them to respond to you. Keep enforcing this timeline throughout the process. So if you're assigned a tenant on October 1st, tell them that they have they must have an application completed by October 14th. And then every other contact that you make with them, let them know, like, I need all your stuff by October 14th. If a tenant or landlord ghosts you during the process of you contacting them, so let's say you call a tenant, they're all like, oh, I'll call you back, and they don't respond to you within 5 days, deny again for unresponsiveness. Molly, go ahead. And then other tips. So I think Molly mentioned this, using all 3 forms of communication, text, voicemail, email, always very helpful, because we sometimes don't know exactly what technology capacity our tenant has or our landlord has in certain cases. I would say all voicemails should be followed up with a text message, just to kind of prove your legitimacy. There are a lot of scam calls going on out there. And then just a reminder that, like, property managers, are often considered our peers or are often people who are, even making less money than we are as a case manager. There is a lot of turnover in this industry, so you may have to go through a couple of emails before you get a person. And you do have to be patient while again reinforcing your timelines. Um, I would I always recommend just letting your tenant know, like, hey, this is how much time I have, or this is who I need to get in contact with to get you rental assistance. Can you let them know I sent an email from my email on this day and have them get in contact with you? Use the tenant to help you. They are on site. They'll be able to go to their property manager and be all like, hey, can you get in touch with Kim? So, the rest are just tips and tricks. But again, if you do have a tenant or landlord who are giving you a hard time, and it's getting to a point where you're all like, I don't get paid enough for this shit, email me. I'm happy to talk out a plan with you, or maybe reinforce or clarify some of these program stipulations with a landlord, especially. So, Molly, go ahead. Okay, DocuSign, I think most of us know how to use DocuSign at this point. This will just contain the login information. And then, Molly, if you want to go through here, I'll have a little bit of time after this training if people want me to go into these slides in depth. But if not, we'll go ahead and just skip through this section. All payment agreements should be sent through DocuSign unless the landlord specifically tells you that they're not getting the document, in which case you can send it to them as an Adobe document for them to sign. We have like 20 minutes left in this training, so I'm gonna skip this break. And then Molly, I'm gonna have you hop back on into the vendors.
All right, I will be as quick as possible with this. You all know a lot about vendors, so this is going to be a bit of a refresher. I do think that this is important, so definitely wanted to reiterate this. So as you know, vendor is a term we use to refer to the landlords and property managers in Apricot, specifically for each property that they have. So each property will have its own vendor intake form, and we create a new vendor intake form for each unique W-9 that a landlord or property manager gives us. So a W-9 is a tax document that a property owner fills out, so we can tell who we should give the tax documents to at the end of the year. These W-9s can be confusing when there are multiple properties under the same owner. So I just wanted to go over that really quick. So this is what a W-9 looks like, as you all know. So line 1, the first section is where the legal entity that is filling out the rent assistance payment. This is the name of the business. Or this is like the name of the owner. This is the person who owns the property. So sometimes the tax name doesn't actually match the business name. So for example, someone might have an LLC, Funny Business LLC, could own an apartment building, but they're not going to name the apartment building Funny Business LLC. They're going to name it Tiny Town Apartments. So Tiny Town Apartments is the business name under the owner Funny Business LLC. So the business name will go into the line 2 of the W-9. So Funny Business LLC could also own a different property called Apricot Courts. So this would actually be a completely different vendor intake form, even though it's owned by the same person. If we are issuing rent assistance to both of these apartments, we should make a new vendor intake form for the second apartment building if we don't already have it in our system. These apartments could have the same EIN or social security number, or they could be different. And either way, we would need 2 different vendor intake forms for these 2 different properties. So we need to review these for accuracy because like any legal document, it needs to be fully accurate to be valid. And it prevents us from paying the wrong vendor, which does happen if we are not looking closely enough. And it prevents delayed payments when we do have issues with vendors. So reviewing this ahead of time can avoid any of these issues from happening in the first place. So a checklist for a valid W-9 looks like there's a name in line 1, line 2 is optional. It does not include more than one LLC, LLP name. It has exactly one tax classification. The address is clear and accurate. It has either an EIN or social security number filled out, but not both. And is signed and dated in either 2024 or 2025. So these are an example of two inaccurate W-9. So there's an Funny Business LLC and then Tiny Town LLC. Generally, the LLC should only be in line 1, and then line 2 is a business name. And if it's an LLC and then a dash and then a different LLC, it's just confusing for our accounting team. They don't know how to like check if this is correct. They don't know who to send, the 1099s to at the end of the year. It's just too confusing, and accounting will push back on these. So a correct W-9 will look like line 1, just having one name, or there is 2 names, but one is very obviously a business name in line 2. Line 1 cannot be blank. It either needs to be in line 1 and a blank in line 2, or there's both. So if this happens, we do need to push back and have them send a new W-9. The biggest thing that we usually see is that the tax classification is inaccurate. Either there's 2 classifications or there's nothing. They've selected this one and there's no letter here. So this needs to either be a C, S, or a P to tell which classification they're using. We will push back if this is wrong. So correct tax classifications look like either one checkbox or one checkbox and then the letter written if it is for that LLC section. Both the SSN and EIN fields should not be filled out. It should be one or the other. Most VIFs will be created by the landlord or property manager, but if the landlord or property manager is having issues with the link, you can also collect the necessary information, and I am happy to create the vendor intake form for you. There are different sections. I'm going to go through this really quickly. The biggest thing is that for the vendor intake form, you should not really be touching it at all, except for the very first section. And if you do need to make an edit on the vendor intake form, you would just select yes under does any vendor data need to be updated. And this changes the status and lets myself and Minnie know that you have a requested modification. So then the status will turn into, I believe, vendor update and review. And we will be checking that and creating either updating the information or pushing it back if we need more clarification from you. These are all the different statuses that it could be. I think the most important ones to know are case manager correction required. That means we are waiting from a correction from you, and you should also have something in your case notes from us to tell you more about what that is. And there should also be a note on the vendor intake form. When it's in vendor update in progress with accounting, it means we've accepted your modification or we have created a modification and it's just being processed through accounting. And by the next week, it should be ready to go. If the email and phone number and name on the contact information is different than what is on the application, I would ask the landlord which contact information they prefer and then modify accordingly, because we want to make sure that this contact information is up to date. There's a lot of turnover in property management companies, so these emails can change very often. So we like to keep that as up to date as possible. The W-9 section should match exactly with what is on the W-9. And there should always be a W-9 in this section. If there isn't one, we need to upload one. I'm just gonna skip this. If there is no business name in the line 2 on the vendor intake form, we would just copy what is in line 1 on line 2. That is just something to know. The mailing address for the payment can be different than the W-9. That is okay. And this is just an important thing. If they are selecting that check is their preferred payment method, we want to just double check that the address on here is correct. And that check section is also on the ASAC. So we do want to be asking that every time we do an ASAC. If you are working with a vendor that has ACH as their preferred payment, but there is no void check on file, we do need a void check before we can push this payment through. So if you're seeing that they have ACH and there's no void check, we do need to ask for that and put it here. So that is important, and that will be pushed back as well. Lastly, if this is a new vendor intake form, under the tenant information and documents section, your tenant's name and their lease and ledger might be added here. So that way you can check this instead of having to ask for the ledger and lease again, which is nice. I'm gonna skip all of this. I think we can go more into vendors in a learning circle if we need more. If we want more, but I think we don't really have a lot of time for this right now. Yeah. Does anyone have any initial questions on vendors right now?
I think just an important thing to note for people, and you might have already said this, Molly, if you're working with a landlord and you search for them via the EIN, or the line 1 on the W-9 and nothing comes up, there is a box on the ASAC that you check to send a link to that landlord to fill out the vendor intake form for you. And then that'll show up in your automatic emails. I'm going to plan a little follow-up training to this one since we are running short on time, probably next Tuesday before we make assignments on the 1st. So we'll be sure to show you all of that then. But just keep in mind, if you are changing anything about the EIN or line 1, it is going to require a new vendor intake form for that vendor rather than making a modification. But yeah, other than that, I think we are okay to move on. This payment approval process, these wonderful PowerPoints were put together by Asha. But we're gonna skip through it since a lot of this was discussed earlier in the training. Please just know, both Asha and I have the same goal of making sure that cases are moved from review required either to payment checklist review or awaiting correction within 5 days of you putting it into review required. That after they are put into payment checklist review, I do review them again, put them into payment in progress. And then Minnie and Molly will take those payment in progress, invoice them, and put them into payment completed. Payments that are in payment in progress by Monday evening will be invoiced by Molly and Minnie on Tuesday afternoon. Actually, Minnie's kind of the person taking over that process at the moment. And just know that that Monday evening may look like 2 a.m. on a Tuesday. Don't be concerned about me. I am nocturnal. So and then payments that are made by ACH or checks are cut by United Way of King County Finance on Thursday. Except for the Mary's Place team, you all have your own finance process. And then checks are mailed on Fridays, and the case status will update to payment completed on that Friday as well. Unless there is like a holiday that might get updated the following Monday. So, all right. And then I think we can skip through the rest of this section, Molly. But this will just show you what we're looking for when we are reviewing your case, once it's been put into review required. Okay. All right. And then we'll go ahead and move on to denials and grievances with Alex. Also just gonna put this in mind. This training may go over to about like 12:35. If you do need to leave right at 12:30, thanks for coming today. And I'll be sending out a follow-up email late this afternoon. But Alex, take it away.
Thank you, Nanny. And hi, everyone. Again, my name is Alex Lopez. I'm the Data and Compliance Specialist, and my pronouns are they, them. I'm going to be covering everything to do with denials and grievances. I'm going to be going over the reasons, the process, what are the expectations when it comes to what you need to do when you deny a tenant, what happens when a grievance is reversed. We're going to go over one common scenario. There's not going to be more than one. But yeah, I'll try and make this quick. Molly, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. And also, this is my second time presenting, so I also really appreciate everyone's patience with me as I get through this. So KKCH has 50, I know Danny mentioned earlier, going on 55% tenant denial rate, and this is across all the agencies. The denial reasons include the tenant opting out, the landlord didn't agree to the terms and conditions, the household lives outside of King County, their AMI is over 80, they don't owe any past due rent at the time that they're selected, the household did not submit the required information or documentation, or they're unresponsive. Same with the landlord, they either didn't submit the required information or they were unresponsive. For households that are not in arrears, I am going to reemphasize that if they weren't in arrears on the day that they were selected for the program, that includes the day and just the month. We do need to deny them for not being in arrears. Please do not sit on a case until the following month. We do have too many renters on the wait list who owe arrears that are more than a month, who we should prioritize. And then for instances where the landlord and tenant did not submit required documentation, the WAM team also uses these two denial reasons. So we'll go over it a little bit more in the next slides, but refer to the ASAC notes and the linked vendor record. No, that's for me. I refer to the ASAC notes and the linked vendor record to determine if it is a WAMP case. Molly, next slide. So as far as the guidelines for a non-responsive tenant or landlord, again, the caseworker should be documenting all their contact attempts. There should be at least 3 done over a 2-week period. So that's going to be 14 consecutive days. After the final contact, if the tenant is not responsible within 5 days from that last email, they are considered unresponsive and can be denied. We do not count automatic messages such as the selection email and the Connect portal emails. You need to send them your own scripted email, whether it's through text message, voicemail, phone number, or email. And so a business day is just a standard working day. It doesn't include the Saturdays or Sundays or federal holidays. The tenant can still file a grievance, but we want to prioritize tenants who are staying responsive with you. Should a tenant or landlord become unresponsive after you've started speaking with them, send that follow-up contact and wait those 5 business days. If they don't respond, deny for being unresponsive. Basically just reiterating, yes, you should have attempted to reach tenants, not just through the email, but through phone calls and texts. If the phone number or if the phone call doesn't go through, you need to document that. If the text message bounces back or the email bounces back, list the phone number and email that was bouncing back. We need to know whether it wasn't working or not. Yeah, Molly, can you send to the next slide? So you've reached the stage where you're finding out that the case needs to be denied because while you're working with the tenant or landlord. So you are leaving detailed notes, including all the documents that were provided through the communication. So even if you are denying them, if you already got a ledger or proof of income, any documents should be uploaded onto the ASAC. The cases can be denied for more than one reasons, but currently you can only select one reason to deny the application. If the landlord does refuse the terms and conditions over the email, you'll convert that message into a PDF and upload it into the extra documentation section. If the landlord refuses verbally, go ahead and add the phone call notes to the ASAC form, including the date of the call and who you spoke with. Molly, next slide. So again, if denying the case for more than one reason, please list all the other reasons in the case notes. Ledgers, income documents, the W-9, proof of residency. We should have those on the record when they're denied. Danny, next, or Molly, next slide. Once you've included all the information in the ASAC notes and uploaded any relevant documentation, you're going to want to change the application status on the ASAC to ineligible. You're also going to be selecting that one denial reason from the drop-down menu. Make sure that the denial date is the same date that you're notifying the tenant that their case has been denied. You'll want to change the UWKC manager decision to denied if it hasn't been changed already. And check the box that says ready to send denial email, because that's what's going to send them that notification. Once you save record, that's that. The next slide is going to be what they're receiving. Molly, if you could go. Thank you. Yeah, so that's what the email is going to look like. Moving on to the next slide. So all tenants are eligible to submit the grievance if their case was denied, but submitting the grievance does not guarantee that the denial reason will be reversed. Sometimes the the reason that they're denied could be because they were non-responsive. But then while I'm going through the case, I see that they have that their ledger was already uploaded and the ledger shows that they didn't owe a balance at the time that they were selected. That denial would be maintained. So again, grievances can be submitted they need to be submitted within 14 days of the denial. They are still eligible for reversal in the event that it is reviewed after the 14 days. The tenant can submit the grievance. It cannot be submitted by the landlord. We do have exceptions where it's a separate caseworker or representative that's working on behalf of the tenant in regards to submitting the grievance. Molly, next slide. So as far as United Way's rules and grievances, we review the grievance submissions, determine if that denial can be overturned based off of the information that we have. We add any relevant case notes to the ASAC for case managers and the approval managers, such as if there's information that we're missing or stuff that needs to be re-reviewed before being moved to review required. And then we begin communication between the tenant and case manager through the grievance ticket thread. Molly, next slide, please. So your role in the grievance process is to review and process the case once that denial is overturned by the United Way team. You're going to revisit the tenant file and review the case for the original denial reason. For tenants that are not in arrears, collect updated documentation to determine if they are past due rent. Again, the ledger must be itemized by the date and the tenant needs to have owed rent before or on the denial date. And then for a tenant over 80% AMI, they'll need updated documentation to determine their income. Self-attestations won't be acceptable in order to determine, they won't be acceptable for reversing denials. And then you'll want to leave any notes on ASAC if you're having to reverse the denial after it's been moved back to in progress. You'll finish the rent assistance process with clients and landlords for the overturned denials. Molly, next slide, please. So normally, the only time United Way should be moving the case back to in progress is if the household was unresponsive or the tenant opted out, but decided to opt back in. There's not a lot that needs to be changed on my end. I will move it back to in progress. And if they don't have a Connect portal, or if they need a new Connect portal link sent, I'll reach out to Danny to make sure that that gets done. In the event that the caseworker has to move back, or the caseworker moves the case back to in progress after receiving the relevant docs and communications. So this is when the household is over 80% AMI, when they need to provide their ledgers or documentation. The denial just gets automatically maintained whenever the landlord does not agree to the program terms and conditions, when the household lives outside of King County, and those that are WAM determined to be WAM cases. Molly, next slide, please. So if I come across a case and there's 3 ways to either go about it. If the denial can be overturned with additional docs, if the decision needs additional documentations to be collected in order to be moved to in progress, or whether the denial should be maintained. Can you go to the next slide, Molly? So when it can be just automatically moved back to in progress, I CC the tenant, and the caseworker to let them know to keep working on the case. You should be able to process the case as normal. They have 5 business days to respond to you as the case manager. And if not, go ahead and deny. We will not reopen that case. Cases should be completed within 2 weeks from them being reopened. Molly, next slide. In the event that we need more documentation from either the landlord or the tenant, the caseworker will get CC'd to the email thread, and the tenant has 5 business days to respond with the required information in order for that denial to be reviewed and overturned. The caseworker should be responding to this email thread within 48 hours of receiving it to remind the tenant what documents are needed. That's assuming that the tenant has not responded either through that email or they haven't reached out to the case manager through phone. Once you review those new documents, you can determine whether the denial can be reversed or not. Go ahead and move it back to in progress if everything looks great to move forward. If not, again, you're just going to leave those notes on the ASAC why the denial had to be maintained. Email the tenant to let them know that, and I'll reemphasize that in the grievance ticket that they have filled out. Molly, next slide. When the denial is automatically maintained, you don't need to do anything from there. I'm just going to send them that denial maintain email. It includes resources as well as letting them know we can re-add you to the wait list. Other than that, there's nothing that we can do moving forward from there. Molly, next slide. All right, so for a common scenario, if you guys can post what you think the answer is just on the chat. Stanley was denied for rent assistance on March 20th for not being in arrears. His case was selected on March 17th. When he submits his grievance on April 1st, he also sends a ledger with a balance beginning April 1st. However, the ledger shows he paid his balance on March 18th after the case manager had already sent a message letting them know they were selected. Am I going to be overturning this denial based off of the information? Molly, next slide. So the answer is no. We are going to be maintaining that denial because, again, we're paying attention to whether they owed arrears the day and the month that they were selected. At this time, they are eligible to go back into the tenant pool. I'll email them to let them know that the denial had to be maintained, and we close out the ticket as well as adding the tenant back to the wait list. Does anyone have any questions about these types of scenarios? Feel free to add it into the chat. Otherwise, Molly, can you move to the next slide?
Great. Thank you, Alex. I'm going to finish up the training with some next steps, as well as a quick shout out to a tenants' rights training that we're doing with the Tenant Law Center starting next week. To just stay consistent with what was shared with people, and then also to kind of match up when subcontracts are going to be signed. The first assignments will be made on October 1st of 2025. That's going to be next Wednesday. So you all will have a week to review this information. Managers, if you could please let me know what your team's capacity is by the end of day on September 30th. I'll know how many people to assign out. Mary's Place team, feel free to get started after this meeting. I am also going to start doing monthly check-ins again with people or with each team to discuss case progress and answer any questions. And I'll reach out to each of your managers to set these up. It'll likely be like 2 weeks before the learning circle, and then we'll do the learning circle on the final Thursday of each month at 10 a.m. I think that time worked for everyone last year, so I think we'll continue with that. I'm also going to be doing TA drop-in office hours on Fridays from 11:30 to 12:30, beginning on, actually, we're going to do October 2nd, since I do have something on October 3rd, and that's when the attendance rights training is. If no one shows up by 12:15, so I'll give it 45 minutes, then they'll just end early. I have been having a ongoing issue with SharePoint access. Essentially, anyone I'm re-adding or adding to it, so if you were newer, it's sending you a link to an incorrect SharePoint, and I have not been able to get it figured out with our IT team. They keep on saying it's resolved, even though it's not. So this recording, I did look up how to send it via OneDrive if I have the capacity to do so. But if I don't, then I'm going to put it up on a YouTube channel that's under my Gmail account. And then that should have all the information from today. I can also create a PDF of the transcript so people can look through that. And then I'll have all the updated documents, scripts, and then a PDF of this PowerPoint sent to you later this afternoon. I'm also going to set up a follow-up meeting to this training. This will be for people who may want a refresher on the information, or someone who's like new to the process. It'll just be, I'll create a test case and then we'll do a screen share to kind of go over what the different elements are and just kind of walk everyone through that case. It should be an hour, and I think I'm going to make it for next Tuesday. But Alicia, I'm going to check with you because I think you're the person who needs like a full walkthrough of the application process. So I'll send out that invite as well. And then next slide, Molly. Okay. Thank you so much for attending today. If you do have any lingering thoughts or questions, please feel free to reach out to Molly or myself. Both of our emails are right there. Let's make it a great year and distribute that money. And then, Molly, do you mind if I just take over the screen share really quick? I think I added this slide after the fact and did not uh did not get it all the way through. I don't know, I think a lot of you all know Marlo. But Marlo's been working with the Tenants Rights Center, which is a group of kind of ex-lawyers or retired lawyers or current lawyers who work with Catholic Community Services. And they've been putting on a tenants' rights workshop, particularly with Solid Ground, who used to be one of our partners. This is going to be very helpful to help tenants navigate situations that are outside of the eviction space, or also a current eviction space, since HJP is at capacity with lawyers. A lot of times people may not get assigned an attorney until about their second court date. So we want to make sure that our tenants understand what their rights are and like what to do. And the Tenants Law Center has graciously set up 2 trainings for us. These are both the same trainings. One on October the 3rd is going to be virtual on Zoom from 1 to 3. There is a link to register for the Zoom on this training. I'll also send this out to you all. And then another training on October the 24th, which is in person at the Catholic Community Center, I believe in the Central District. Please try and attend at least one of these. I won't be able to make the one on the 3rd, but I will be making the one on the 24th. That is in person. And it will have a lot of great information that'll really help us be a good resource for our tenants. Alrighty. Well, that is all from me today. Again, thank you so much for coming. And it was great to see you all. Looking forward to getting all of this funding out to people. I think it's going to be another great year. and another effective year in making sure our community stays housed. All right, thanks all. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Sweet.